Velthar's third eye blinked slowly as he studied the data on his screen. The distress signal pulsed with an unfamiliar pattern, coming from somewhere beyond the Andromeda relay station. In his 300 years of service, he had encountered 47 different species. This signal belonged to none of them. "Commander Kesral, we have an unknown vessel in distress." Velthar called across the bridge of the Times. "Luminous conscience." Asterisk. His voice carried the calm certainty of someone who had never known real fear. The elderly Quarian turned from his meditation pod, his silver skin shimmering under the soft lights. "Unknown? How interesting. Set an intercept course. Let's cour. Perhaps we shall add a 48th species to our records." Velthar felt a flutter of excitement. This was why he loved deep space exploration. The Quarians had been traveling the stars for over 5,000 years, spreading peace and knowledge wherever they went. They were civilized. They were enlightened. They were superior to the violent, primitive races that still squabbled over resources and territory. The ship moved through space with barely a whisper. Quarian technology was magnificent, powered by harmonic energy that worked with the universe rather than against it. They had no weapons. Of course. What need did civilized beings have for violence? 2 hours later, they found the damaged vessel. It was small, perhaps a quarter the size of the Times' luminous conscience asterisk. The hull was scarred and torn, with atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. The design was crude by Quarian standards, all sharp angles and heavy plating. It looked like something built to withstand punishment rather than avoid it. "Life signs?" Kesral asked. "5. Velthar reported. "Faint, but stable. Their life support is failing. They have perhaps 3 hours remaining. Bring them aboard. Prepare the medical bay." The rescue was smooth and efficient. Quarian technology could do in minutes what most species required hours to accomplish. Velthar watched through the viewing port as the transport beam pulled the 5 survivors from their dying ship. When they materialized in the docking bay, Velthar got his first look at humans. They were short, standing barely taller than his shoulder. Their skin was a pale brown color, smooth and fragile looking. They had only 2 eyes, positioned in the front of their heads like predators. Their bodies were compact and muscular in a way that suggested physical labor rather than intellectual pursuit. The one in front, a female by Velthar's best guess, stood straight despite obvious injuries. Blood ran from a cut above her eye, but she didn't seem to notice. Her dark eyes scanned the docking bay with quick, calculating movements. "I am Captain Hyun of the exploration vessel Times Baekdu asterisk," she said in a clear voice. The translation device in Velthar's ear converted her strange language into something he could understand. "We are grateful for your assistance." Velthar stepped forward, making the gesture of peace his people had used for millennia. "I am Velthar, xenobiologist of the Quarian Confederation. You are safe now. Please, come. Our medical facilities will attend to your injuries." The humans exchanged glances. There was something in that look, some silent communication that Velthar couldn't quite read. Then, Hyun nodded. In the medical bay, Velthar observed as the other humans were treated. The female engineer, Bora, had a broken arm, but refused sedation until she had checked on her crew. The male security officer, Taemin, sat perfectly still while the medical scanner worked, his eyes constantly moving, watching everything. The medical officer, Nari, actually helped treat her own injuries, explaining human physiology to the confused Quarian doctors. "Fascinating," Velthar muttered to himself, making notes on his datapad. "They show remarkable pain tolerance. Their instinct is to remain alert rather than seek comfort. Note the pack behavior, the constant awareness of each other's status." Over the next few hours, Velthar interviewed the humans. They were from a planet called Earth, they explained, a world in a distant arm of the galaxy. They were explorers, seeking other intelligent life. Their ship had been damaged by a gravitational anomaly that their sensors had failed to detect. "Your technology is quite primitive," Velthar said, not unkindly. He was simply stating a fact. "Your vessel has no harmonic shielding, no quantum stabilizers. How do you expect to explore deep space safely?" Bora, the engineer, smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We build tough and hope for the best. Sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't. But that is so inefficient. So dangerous. We're still here, aren't we?" Velthar didn't know how to respond to that. There was a logic to it, he supposed, but it was the logic of someone who expected hardship, who planned for failure. How sad to live that way. He found Captain Hyun in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her crew had been given quarters to rest, but she remained awake. "You should recover your strength," Velthar said gently. "You are safe now. The Times, Luminous Conscience Times, will take you to the nearest starbase. From there, we can arrange transport back to your homeworld." Hyun turned to look at him. There was something ancient in her eyes, something that made Velthar uncomfortable. "How long have your people been traveling the stars?" "Over 5,000 years. And in all that time, have you ever been attacked?" The question surprised him. "Attacked?" "Well, there are some primitive species that exhibit aggressive tendencies, but we simply avoid them, or wait for them to achieve enlightenment. Violence is the refuge of the ignorant." "Is it?" Hyun asked softly. She turned back to the stars. "Must be nice, living in a universe where everyone plays fair." Before Velthar could ask what she meant, alarms blared throughout the ship. His datapad lit up with urgent alerts. His 3 hearts began to beat faster. "Commander!" The voice of the sensor technician came through the communication system. "Multiple vessels approaching at high speed. Configuration matches Krell warships. 4 ships. They will be in range in 3 hours. The blood drained from Velthar's face. The Krell. Every species knew of them. They were slavers, conquerors, destroyers. They took what they wanted and killed what they couldn't use. Even the Quarians, with all their wisdom and technology, had learned to flee from the Krell. He looked at Hyun. Her expression hadn't changed. She didn't look surprised or afraid. She looked like someone who had just had a suspicion confirmed. 3 hours, she said quietly. Can you run? Our hyperdrive was damaged during your rescue. Repairs will take 6 hours minimum. Hyun nodded slowly. Then she tapped a device on her wrist. Bora. Taemin. Nari. Daehyun. Bridge. Now. She looked at Velthar. Take me to your commander. We need to talk. What is there to discuss? Velthar felt panic rising in his chest. We cannot fight them. We have no weapons. We are a research vessel. We. Hyun started walking toward the bridge. Then I guess it's a good thing you found us. Something in her voice made Velthar's skin go cold. He hurried after her, his mind racing. What could 5 injured humans possibly do against 4 Krell warships? On the bridge, Commander Kesral was ordering evacuation protocols. Crew members rushed to pack essential data and prepare escape pods. The mood was one of controlled panic. Hyun walked to the center of the bridge and waited until she had everyone's attention. Her crew filed in behind her, each one moving with purpose, despite their injuries. Commander, Hyun said, my crew and I can help you survive this. Kesral stared at her. Child? You are kind, but you do not understand. The Krell cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be escaped. Our only hope is to scatter in the escape pods and pray some of us survive. I'm not talking about running, Hyun said. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. I'm talking about fighting. The bridge went silent. Velthar felt his 3 hearts skip. Fighting? Against the Krell? It was madness. It was suicide. It was impossible. Bora stepped forward. How old is this ship? 200 years, Kesrel said, confused. Good. Older systems are easier to modify. I need access to your engineering deck and a full schematic of your power systems. Taman was studying a holographic display of the ship's layout. Narrow corridors. Multiple deck levels. Lots of places to funnel attackers. Not bad for a defensive position. Nari looked at Kesrel. I'll need to know the medical capabilities of Krell physiology. Weak points. Vulnerabilities. Velthar couldn't stay silent anymore. This is insanity. We are 12 Quarians and 5 humans against hundreds of Krell warriors. The mathematics alone. Aiding Day. Hyun looked at him. In her eyes, he saw something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't anger or fear. It was certainty. The mathematics, she said softly, say that we're already dead if we run. At least this way, we die on our feet. She turned to Kesrel. Commander, you've never had to fight for your survival. My species has done nothing but fight for 3 million years. Let us teach you. Commander Kesrel stood frozen, his silver skin pale with shock. Around the bridge, the other Quarians stared at the humans with expressions of confusion and horror. Fighting? The word itself felt wrong, primitive, beneath them. Velthar found his voice first. Commander, this is madness. We should continue with the evacuation plan. Perhaps some escape pods will make it to the relay station. Perhaps, Hyun said. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Krell ship's approach vectors. Or perhaps the Krell will track every pod and collect you one by one. They're very good at that. Bora was already moving toward the engineering station, her broken arm bound tight against her chest. She used her good hand to pull up the ship's systems on the main display. Your power core is actually impressive. Clean harmonic energy, minimal waste. But you're only using about 30% of its potential output. That is the safe operating limit, one of the Quarian engineers said. Pushing beyond that risks damaging the harmonics. Good thing damage is the least of our problems right now. Bora's fingers danced across the controls. Your mining lasers. They're designed for cutting rock, right? What if we redirect them? Increase the power flow by, say, 300%? The engineer's eyes went wide. That would burn out the emitters within seconds. And the energy drain would destabilize the entire ship within seconds, Bora repeated. That's all the time we need. One good shot to cripple their lead ship. After that, they'll be more careful. Velthar watched in horror as Bora began marking modifications on the display. She was talking about weaponizing their research equipment, about damaging their own ship, about violence. Taman had moved to the tactical station. He was studying the ship's layout, with the intensity of a predator, learning new hunting grounds. These cargo bays. What's stored in them? Scientific equipment, sample containers, fuel cells for the auxiliary systems, Kesrel said. Fuel cells. Taman nodded. Explosive if ruptured? Well, yes, but they are carefully shielded. Can we detach them? Release them into space? Kesral's translator seemed to be struggling. You want to make bombs? From our fuel reserves? Improvised mines, Taman corrected. We scatter them in the Krell's approach path. They won't expect a research vessel to have weapons. Won't be watching for debris. 1 or 2 ships might hit them before they realize what's happening. Nari was at the medical station, pulling up data files. I need everything you have on Krell biology. Atmospheric requirements, temperature tolerance, visual spectrum, anything. A Quarian medical technician reluctantly provided the files. Nari scrolled through them quickly, her eyes moving faster than Velthar could follow. How did they process information so rapidly? They breathe a nitrogen-oxygen mix, but they need higher pressure than you or us, Nari said. If we can breach their suits, they'll suffocate in our atmosphere. Their eyes are sensitive to high-frequency light. Certain chemical compounds in your medical supplies could be aerosolized, make them disorienting. You want to use our medical supplies as weapons? The technician whispered. Nari looked up. Her expression was not cruel. But it was hard. I want us to survive. Do you? Hyun stood at the center of the bridge. Watching her crew work, she looked at Kesral. Commander, I need your decision now. We have less than 3 hours. If we're going to do this, we need to start immediately. Kesral looked around at his crew. Velthar could see the struggle on his commander's face. 5,000 years of peaceful philosophy, weighing against the immediate reality of annihilation. Velthar wanted to tell him to refuse, to stick to their principles. But he also wanted to live. What? What do you need from us? Kesral asked quietly. Something changed in Hyun's posture. She stood straighter, and her voice took on a tone of command. Bora, you have engineering. Take whoever you need, and start the modifications. Taemin, defensive preparations. Show these people how to fight in close quarters. Nari, medical bay. Prepare for casualties. Set up triage stations near key defensive points. She turned to Kesral. Commander, I need you to trust me. When the Krell arrive, let me handle communications. And I need your crew to follow my orders during combat. I know that goes against everything you believe, but I've done this before. They haven't. You have fought the Krell? Velthar asked. No, Hyun said. But I've fought. That's more experience than anyone else on this ship has. Over the next 2 hours, the Time's luminous conscience Times transformed from a peaceful research vessel into something else entirely. Velthar watched in fascinated horror as the humans worked. Bora was like a force of nature in the engineering bay. She moved through the complex systems with confidence, making changes that made the Quarian engineers gasp. She rerouted power, overrode safety protocols, and turned their mining equipment into crude but effective weapons. When one engineer protested that her modifications would damage the ship permanently, Bora had looked at him and said, "There won't be a ship left to worry about if we don't survive the next hour." Velthar followed Taemin as he moved through the corridors. The human security officer studied every corner, every junction, every room. He identified choke points, places where a few defenders could hold off many attackers. He showed the Quarians how to create barricades from cargo containers, how to use the environment to their advantage. "You're taller than the Krell," Taemin explained to a group of nervous crew members. "That's an advantage in these corridors. They'll have to hunch down. You won't. Use that. Stay high. Aim for their heads." "But we have never held a weapon," one Quarian said. Taemin handed him a tool that had been modified into something sharp and deadly. "Then today you learn. Hold it like this. Strike like this. Aim for the soft spots between their armor plates. Don't think. Just act." Rear. 2. In the medical bay, Nari had created something that looked like a battlefield hospital. Emergency supplies were stacked at strategic points. She had recruited several Quarians to help, showing them how to treat the kinds of injuries they would soon see. Burns. Cuts. Broken bones. Things that Quarian doctors hadn't dealt with in centuries. "The most important thing is to stop bleeding quickly," Nari explained. "Don't worry about being gentle. Worry about keeping them alive." Velthar found himself assigned to help her. He tried to pay attention, but his mind kept wandering. This couldn't be happening. They were scientists, researchers, philosophers, not soldiers, not warriors. But the humans moved with such certainty. They didn't question or doubt. They simply did what needed to be done. There was something terrifying about that confidence. With 30 minutes remaining, Hyun called everyone to the bridge. The modifications were complete. The improvised mines were deployed. The defensive positions were ready. Now there was nothing to do but wait. "Listen carefully," Hyun said. "When the Krell arrive, they will demand surrender. Commander Kesral will communicate with them. Buy us time. While they're talking, we'll be positioning the ship for our first strike. When I give the signal, Bora will fire the mining laser. After that, it's going to get messy." She looked around at the assembled Quarians. "I know you're afraid. That's good. Fear keeps you alert, but don't let it paralyze you. When the fighting starts, trust your training. Trust each other. Trust us. We've done this before. We'll get through it. Velthar wanted to ask how. How could 5 humans and 12 Quarians possibly survive against 4 warships full of Krell warriors? But he didn't ask. He wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. The Krell ships appeared on sensors. They were massive, dark things covered in weapons and armor. They moved through space like predators, confident in their superiority. A transmission came through. The Krell commander appeared on the screen. He was enormous, covered in thick armor that made him look more like a machine than a living being. His face was a nightmare of sharp teeth and cold eyes. "Quarian vessel," the Krell commander said. His voice was like grinding metal. "You will surrender your ship and crew. You will provide us with all data and resources. You will submit, or you will die. Choose now." Kesral stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. "We are a research vessel. We have no weapons. We pose no threat. Please, we wish only to pass peacefully." The Krell commander laughed. It was a horrible sound. "We know you have no weapons. That is why you will surrender. You have 1 minute to comply." "Markins." Hyun touched Kesral's shoulder, a gesture to step aside. She moved in front of the screen. "This is Captain Hyun of Earth. Your terms are refused." The Krell commander stared at her. "Earth? I know of no such world. You are Quarian slaves? We are humans," Hyun said calmly. "And we do not surrender." For a moment, the Krell commander looked confused. Then he laughed again. "Humans. Small. Weak. Foolish. You will be broken first. Then, we will take the Quarians. You're welcome to try," Hyun said. She cut the transmission. She turned to Bora. "Do it." The mining laser fired. It was a beam of pure, concentrated energy, bright enough to make Velthar's eyes water even through the filters. It struck the lead Krell ship directly in its engine section. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire rear third of the Krell ship exploded. Velthar's 3 hearts felt like they would burst from his chest. They had done it. They had actually damaged a Krell warship. It was impossible. But it was happening. Hyun's voice was cold and clear. "Now they know we can hurt them. Now the real fight begins." The damaged Krell ship tumbled through space, atmosphere venting from the massive hole in its engine section. Velthar stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. They had hurt them, actually hurt them. Then reality crashed back down. 3 more ships still operational, Taman reported from the tactical station. "They're spreading out. Classic attack formation. They won't make the same mistake twice," Hyun said. She looked at Bora. "How many more shots do we have?" "Maybe 2 before the emitters burn out completely. 3 if we're lucky. Make them count." The Krell ships moved faster now, no longer casual in their approach. They began firing. Energy bolts struck the times, luminous consciences times shields, each impact making the ship shudder. The Quarian shields were strong, designed to withstand cosmic radiation and debris, but they weren't made for combat. They began to fail. "Evasive maneuvers," Hyun ordered. "Bring us about. Heading 273. Bora, target the ship on our left. Compensate for their acceleration." The second mining laser shot missed, the Krell ship rolling away at the last second. The third shot caught it along its side, tearing a long gash in the hull, but not destroying it. "Shields at 40%, someone called out. "They're launching boarding craft," Taman said. His voice was calm, but Velthar heard something underneath it. Not fear. Anticipation. On the screen, Velthar saw small ships detaching from the Krell vessels. Fast attack craft meant to latch onto the hull and cut through. In minutes, the Krell would be inside the ship. Hyun activated the ship-wide communication system. "All crew to defensive positions. They're coming aboard." Remember your training. Hold the choke points. Don't let them reach engineering or the bridge. Velthar felt his legs shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. In moments, Krell warriors would be inside the ship, and he would have to fight. He, who had never raised a hand in violence in 300 years of life. The first impact shook the entire ship. A Krell boarding craft had latched onto the hull near Cargo Bay 3. Velthar watched on the monitor as cutting lasers began burning through the hull. Nari, Daehun, with me, Hyun said. Commander Kesral, stay on the bridge. Keep us moving. Make us a hard target. She looked at Velthar. You too. You're with us, but I'm not. I can't. Velthar stammered. Hyun grabbed his arm. Her grip was strong, surprisingly so for such a small being. You're about to learn. They ran through the corridors. Velthar had never moved so fast in his life. His 3 hearts hammered in his chest. They reached Cargo Bay 3, just as the Krell finished cutting through. The hull section fell inward with a crash that echoed through the entire deck. Hyun and her team took positions behind cargo containers. She handed Velthar a weapon, one of the modified tools Taemin had prepared. It felt wrong in his hands. Heavy and awkward. Stay behind cover, Hyun said. Aim for center mass. Don't hesitate. The first Krell warrior came through the breach. He was massive, easily twice Velthar's height, and 3 times as wide. His armor was scarred and battle-worn. In his hands, he carried a weapon that looked capable of tearing through walls. Hyun fired first. Her weapon, a modified plasma cutter, struck the Krell in the chest. The warrior staggered but didn't fall. His armor was too thick, but the shot had done something. It had gotten his attention. The Krell turned toward Hyun, raising his weapon, and in that moment, Nari fired from a different angle, hitting the warrior in the exposed joint where his helmet met his armor. The Krell went down. More came through the breach. 4, 5, 6 of them. They moved with military precision, covering each other as they advanced. But the humans had chosen their position well. The cargo bay was full of containers and equipment, creating a maze that broke up the Krell formation. Dae-hyun, the 5th human crew member who had been helping in engineering, threw something that looked like a medical canister. It exploded in the middle of the Krell group, releasing a cloud of gas. The warriors stumbled, their movements becoming uncoordinated. Now, Hyun shouted. The humans opened fire. They didn't shoot wildly or panic. Every shot was aimed, calculated. They targeted weak points, exposed joints, damaged armor. They used the environment, ducking behind cover and moving position constantly. Velthar watched in horror and awe. This wasn't just fighting. This was something else. Something practiced and refined. The humans moved like parts of a single organism, each one knowing where the others would be without needing to communicate. A Krell warrior broke through their line, charging directly at Velthar's position. The massive creature raised its weapon, and Velthar froze. Every philosophy, every meditation, every principle he had lived by for 3 centuries meant nothing in that moment. He was simply, terribly, afraid. The weapon fired. Velthar closed his eyes, waiting for death. But the shot never came. When he opened his eyes, Hyun was standing between him and the Krell. She had tackled the warrior's arm, redirecting his aim. The shot had gone wide, burning a hole in the wall behind them. Hyun had something in her hand. A piece of sharpened metal, crude and simple. She drove it into the gap between the Krell's helmet and chest armor. The warrior made a gurgling sound and fell. Hyun was bleeding. The Krell had hit her, and her arm was broken. But she was still moving, still fighting. She grabbed Velthar and pulled him to his feet. "Stay with me," she said. "We're not done yet." The remaining Krell fell back, regrouping near the breach. They had learned that the cargo bay was a killing ground. They would try a different approach. "Fall back to Junction 7, Hyun ordered. Taemin. Status? Taemin's voice came through the communication device. 2 more boarding parties. Decks 4 and 6. We're holding, but barely. These Quarians aren't trained for this. They're learning fast. Keep them alive. They retreated through the corridors. Behind them, Velthar could hear the Krell. Following. More cautious now. But still, coming. The ship was a maze of passages and rooms, and the humans used every meter of it. At Junction 7, Taemin had set up a defensive position with 3 Quarians. They looked terrified, but they were in position. Weapons ready. Taemin nodded at Hyun, a silent communication passing between them. The Krell came around the corner in a rush, trying to overwhelm the defenders with speed and numbers. But the narrow corridor worked against them. They couldn't spread out, couldn't use their superior size and strength. Taemin fought like something from a nightmare. He moved fast, faster than Velthar would have thought possible. He targeted eyes, joints, anywhere the armor was weak. When his weapon ran out of power, he picked up a piece of broken pipe and kept fighting. One of the Quarians went down, struck by a Krell weapon. Velthar heard himself scream, a sound he didn't know he could make. The shot went wide, but it made the Krell turn, giving Taemin an opening. The human didn't waste it. The fight seemed to last forever and no time at all. When it was finally over, 5 Krell warriors lay dead in the corridor. The Quarians were still alive, though one was badly injured. Nari was already there, working on him with quick, efficient movements. Good, Hyun said, though she was leaning against the wall, breathing hard. You're all still alive. That means we're winning. Winning? Velthar gasped. Half the ship is breached. The Krell are everywhere. How is this winning? Vel. Hyun looked at him. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. Her arm hung at a wrong angle. But her eyes were clear and focused, because we're still fighting, and every minute we fight is a minute the hyperdrive gets closer to being repaired. Bora. Status? Bora's voice came through, strained but steady. 4 hours. I'm working as fast as I can, but I can't rush physics. Keep at it. We'll buy you the time. Another alarm sounded. More boarding craft. The Krell weren't giving up. They were adapting, learning, coming at the ship from multiple angles. The next hour was hell. Velthar moved through it in a daze, following Hyun and her crew from one defensive point to another. They fought, fell back, fought again. The Quarians were learning, becoming more effective with each engagement. But people were dying. Quarians, who had never hurt anyone in their lives, were bleeding out in corridors, calling for help that sometimes came too late. Velthar found himself at another defensive position, weapon in hand. A Quarian engineer named Telron was beside him. They had worked together for 50 years, discussing science and philosophy over meals. Now they were hiding behind a makeshift barricade, waiting for more Krell to come. I never imagined, Telron whispered. Never thought I would see war. Neither did I, Velthar admitted. The humans. They do this. They live like this. Thing. Velthar thought about that. About how Hyun had moved. How she had fought despite her injuries. About how Taemin never seemed afraid, only focused. About how all of them just kept going, kept fighting, as if this was something they had always known they might have to do. I think, Velthar said slowly, they have always known this might happen. I think they prepare for the worst, even while hoping for the best. And I think that is what makes them terrifying. The Krell came again. And again, they fought. Somewhere in the chaos, Velthar lost track of time. He just kept firing. Kept falling back. Kept somehow staying alive. The humans were always there. Always moving. Always fighting. They took hits that should have stopped them and kept going. They protected the Quarians, putting themselves between the untrained crew and the Krell warriors again and again. Finally, Bora's voice came through the communication system. Hyperdrive is online. We can jump in 5 minutes. There. All forces. Fall back to the bridge, Hyun ordered. Fighting retreat. Don't let them cut us off. The retreat was a nightmare. The Krell knew what they were trying to do and pushed hard. But the humans had planned for this too. They had set traps throughout the ship, using the improvised mines and modified systems. Sections of corridor collapsed. Doors sealed shut. Every step back, they made the Krell pay. They made it to the bridge with seconds to spare. The doors sealed behind them as Krell warriors hammered on the other side. The metal began to glow as they cut through. Jump, Kesral ordered. The universe twisted. The times, luminous conscience times, leaped through hyperspace, leaving the Krell and the battle behind. They were safe. Velthar collapsed to the floor, his 3 hearts racing. Around him, others did the same. They had survived. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived. Hyun stood at the center of the bridge, still on her feet despite her injuries. She looked around at the exhausted crew, Quarian and human alike. Well done, she said quietly. All of you. You fought well. Velthar looked up at her and felt something shift inside him. He had thought humans were primitive, weak, inferior, but he had been wrong. So terribly, terribly wrong. The silence after the battle was worse than the noise during it. Velthar sat on the bridge floor, his 3 hearts slowly returning to normal rhythm. Around him, the other survivors sat or stood in various states of shock. Some were injured. All were changed. 4 Quarians were dead. 4 crew members who had left on this mission expecting to study stars and catalog phenomena. Instead, they had died fighting for their lives. Velthar had known 2 of them for over a century. He would never speak with them again. The ship itself was a wreck. The corridor walls were scorched and melted. Whole sections had been vented to space. Blood, both Quarian and Krell, stained the floors. The careful, peaceful research vessel had become a battlefield, and it showed. Velthar watched as Nari moved through the bridge, checking each person for injuries. She had been working for hours without rest, treating wounded, stabilizing critical cases. Her hands were steady, but Velthar could see the exhaustion in her eyes. You need to rest, he said, as she examined a cut on his shoulder. After everyone else, she replied. Her voice was hoarse. That's how it works. But you are injured too. Velthar had seen her take a hit during the fighting, a glancing blow that had left a burn across her ribs. It can wait. She finished bandaging his shoulder and moved to the next person. Velthar stood slowly, his legs shaking. He made his way to the observation deck, needing to be away from the bridge for a moment. The stars looked the same as they always had, cold and distant. But Velthar felt different. The universe felt different. He found Bora in the engineering bay. She was working on repairs to the ship's systems, her broken arm in a temporary brace. The engineering bay was a disaster area. Half the systems were offline. Damaged conduits sparked and smoked. But Bora moved through it with purpose, making notes on a datapad. You should rest, Velthar said, repeating the words he had said to Nari. Bora didn't look up. Life support is at 60% efficiency. If I don't repair the primary oxygen recycler in the next 6 hours, we'll have to start rationing air. So no, I shouldn't rest. Velthar watched her work. How do you do it? Do what? Keep going. After everything that just happened, after the violence and death, how do you just continue? Bora stopped working. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were red with exhaustion. But there was something else there too. Something old. Because stopping doesn't change what happened. The dead are still dead. Whether I cry or whether I work. The ship still needs repairs. The living still need air to breathe. So I work. She paused. I'll grieve later. When there's time, when everyone is safe. But how do you live with it? The things you had to do? The Krell you killed? Bora's jaw tightened. Not easily. But I live with it, because the alternative was letting them kill us. I don't enjoy violence. None of us do. But we understand something that maybe you don't. Peace isn't free. Someone has to be willing to fight for it. She went back to her repairs. Velthar stood there for a long moment, processing her words. Then he asked quietly, "Can I help?" Bora glanced at him, surprised. Then she nodded. "Hold that conduit steady while I reconnect it." They worked together in silence. It wasn't much, but it was something to do, something to focus on besides the memories of the battle. Later, Velthar found Taman sitting alone in one of the crew quarters. The human security officer was cleaning his hands. There was no blood visible, but he kept washing them anyway, over and over, scrubbing at skin that was already clean. Velthar hesitated in the doorway. During the battle, Taman had seemed like a force of nature, unstoppable and fearless. But now, he looked small, young, human. "Are you well?" Velthar asked. Taman looked up. His eyes were distant. "Do you know how many I killed today?" No. I lost count during the fighting. 17. Taman's voice was flat. 17 living beings. Some of them probably had families, children, people who cared about them. And I killed them. Velthar didn't know what to say. In the battle, it had seemed necessary. Survival. But now, in the quiet aftermath, it felt different. "You saved us," Velthar said finally. "Without you, we would all be dead or enslaved." "I know." Taman looked down at his hands. "That's what makes it worse. I had to do it. It was necessary. But that doesn't make it easy to live with." He stood up, drying his hands on a cloth. "My people have a saying. The price of peace is paid in nightmares. Tonight, I'll start paying mine." He left the room. Velthar stood there, realizing something profound. The humans weren't fearless. They weren't naturally violent or cruel. They were just willing to do what needed to be done, and then carry the weight of it afterward. That night, the survivors gathered in the main hall. Commander Kesseral stood before them, his silver skin dull with exhaustion. Behind him, the humans stood together, supporting each other. "We honor our fallen," Kesseral said. His voice shook. Telron, scientist. Velkas, engineer. Morath, medical technician. Selwen, navigator. They gave their lives so that we might survive. They will be remembered. Their names will be spoken. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. The Quarians performed the traditional ceremony of remembrance, each one speaking a memory of the dead. It was simple and quiet, but Velthar felt the weight of it. They had been real people with real lives, and now they were gone. When it was done, Hyun stepped forward. She looked at the assembled Quarians. "I'm sorry," she said. "We brought violence to your ship. We made you fight, when fighting goes against everything you believe. Some of you died because of that. I carry that weight." Kesseral shook his head. "You did not bring violence. The Krell brought violence. You brought something else. You brought the will to survive. Without you, we would all be dead. You have nothing to apologize for." But Hyun didn't look comforted. Velthar understood. The humans had saved them, yes, but they had also shown them a part of the universe the Quarians had been able to ignore for thousands of years. The part where survival sometimes required violence. That was a heavy gift to give. Over the next few days, the ship limped toward the nearest Quarian starbase. Repairs continued. Wounds healed, at least the physical ones. The crew slowly returned to some version of normal routine, but nothing was the same. The Quarians moved differently now. They looked at corners with new suspicion. They checked security systems that they had never bothered to maintain before. They had learned that the universe was not as safe as they had believed. Velthar spent much of the journey talking with the humans. He asked them about Earth, about human history. What he learned disturbed him deeply. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times: nuclear weapons, climate disasters, disease, war after war after war. Their history was written in blood and suffering, yet somehow they had survived. They had learned. They had grown. "We're not special," Nari told him during one conversation. "We're just stubborn. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we failed, we tried again. That's all it is. Stubbornness. But how do you live with such a violent history? We don't forget it. We study it. We teach it to our children. We remember what we're capable of. The good and the bad. That way, we can choose to be better." As they approached the starbase, Commander Kesral called Velthar to his quarters. The old commander looked even older now, the weight of command and combat aging him visibly. "Velthar, you are my best xenobiologist. You have studied these humans closely. What is your assessment?" Velthar thought carefully before answering. "They are dangerous, Commander. Perhaps the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. But not in the way I first thought." "Explain." "Their danger is not in their violence. Many species are violent. The Krell are violent. But the Krell are predictable. They take what they want through force. Simple. Brutal. Understandable." Velthar paused. "The humans are dangerous because they understand violence completely. They know its cost, its necessity, its consequences. They can be peaceful, and they prefer peace, but they are never unprepared for war. That combination, it is terrifying." Kesral nodded slowly. "And yet they fight with such care. They protected us, even at risk to themselves. Yes, that is perhaps most terrifying of all. They could have let us die, could have saved themselves and abandoned us. But they chose to fight for us. Strangers from an unknown species. They fought for us as if we were their own. What do you recommend?" Velthar knew his answer would change everything. "I recommend we seek alliance with humanity. Formal alliance. Not because we fear them, Commander, but because if we face threats like the Krell again, I want humans standing with us, not against us." The old commander smiled sadly. "I had the same thought. But it is not my decision alone. The Council must decide." When they finally arrived at the starbase, word of their encounter had already spread. The story of a research vessel fighting off a Krell war fleet seemed impossible. Yet here they were, damaged but alive. Velthar stood with Hyun on the observation deck as the starbase grew larger in the viewport. The human captain had been quiet for the past day, thoughtful. "What happens now?" Velthar asked. "We go home, make our report, hope that our species can become friends. And if they cannot, if my people are too afraid of yours?" Hyun was quiet for a long moment. "Then we'll be sad, but we'll understand. Fear is a reasonable response to what you've seen. We know what we are, what we're capable of. We don't expect everyone to accept that. But you saved us. We did, and we'd do it again. Not because we want gratitude or alliance, but because it's right. Because when we see people in danger, we help them. That's what being human means." Velthar looked at her. This small, fragile being, who had fought with such ferocity, who had carried the weight of command and combat with such grace, who had killed to protect others and would carry those deaths for the rest of her life. "Captain Hyun," he said, "I wish to make a request." "What request?" "I wish to accompany you to Earth, to see your world, to understand your people fully. Will you allow this?" Hyun looked surprised. "That's a long journey. Weeks in hyperspace. I know. But I must understand. Not just observe, but truly understand." Hyun studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right. But I warn you, Earth will show you things that may disturb you further. I know, Velthar said. But I think I need to be disturbed. My people need to be disturbed. We have been comfortable for too long. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. Velthar spent the time learning everything he could about humanity. The humans shared freely, holding nothing back. Perhaps that was the most unsettling thing. They were not ashamed of their history, even the darkest parts. Hyun showed him recordings of human wars, great conflicts that had killed millions. Weapons of such terrible power, they could destroy entire cities in moments. Velthar watched in horror as mushroom clouds rose over ancient Earth cities, as soldiers fought in muddy trenches, as entire civilizations fell to conquest and disease. "Why do you show me this?" he asked. "Why reveal your worst moments?" "Because hiding them would be a lie," Hyun replied. "If we want peace between our peoples, it must be built on truth." But there was more than just violence. Velthar also saw humans creating beautiful art, composing music that made his 3 hearts ache. He saw them building cities that touched the sky, exploring their own world with the same curiosity they brought to the stars. He saw acts of incredible kindness, people helping strangers, sacrificing for others. "You are contradictions," Velthar said one evening as they shared a meal. "You create and destroy. You love and you hate. How do you reconcile these opposites?" Taemin, who had been quiet during most of the journey, spoke up. "We don't reconcile them. We just are both. Every human has the capacity for great good and great evil. What matters is which we choose. And you always choose good?" "No," Taemin said honestly. "Sometimes we choose wrong. Sometimes we fail. But we keep trying. That's what makes us human." As they approached Earth's solar system, Velthar felt his anxiety growing. What would he find there? A world of warriors? A planet armed and dangerous? When Earth finally appeared on the view screen, Velthar was surprised. It was beautiful. Blue and green and white, swirled with clouds. It looked peaceful, serene, not at all like a world that had birthed such dangerous beings. But as they entered orbit, Velthar's instruments began picking up data. Satellites. Thousands of them. Some were clearly for communication and research. Others were weapons platforms, defense systems. Earth was peaceful, but it was also prepared. "You have militarized your own orbit," Velthar observed. "We learned our lessons," Hyun said. "Hope for peace, but prepare for war. Never be caught unprepared again." They took a shuttle down to the surface, landing at a military base. Velthar expected something harsh and imposing. Instead, he found a facility that was both functional and oddly welcoming. There were gardens between the buildings. Art on the walls. It was a military installation, but humans had still made space for beauty. He was taken to meet the admiral in charge of first contact protocols. Her name was Ji-woo, an older woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. She greeted Velthar with courtesy and respect. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "Captain Hyun has told us much about you. About your courage during the encounter with the Krell." "I did very little," Velthar said. "Your people saved us. You fought when fighting went against everything you believed. That takes a special kind of courage." They walked through the facility as Ji-woo explained Earth's defensive preparations. Velthar's 3 hearts sank with each revelation. The damaged ship times, Baekdu times, had not been alone. It had been shadowed by a full battle group, hidden and watching. "You used your own people as bait?" Velthar asked, horrified. "They volunteered," Ji-woo said. "Every member of first contact teams knows the risks. They accept them willingly. We needed to know how other species would react to humans in distress. Would they help? Would they ignore us? Would they attack? And if the Quarians had attacked, then we would have learned that too." And responded accordingly. Ji-woo led him to a command center. On the walls were displays, showing star charts, fleet positions, intelligence reports. Earth had been monitoring the galaxy for decades, cataloging threats, identifying potential allies and enemies. We knew about the Krell expansion, Jiwoo explained. We've been tracking them for years. We knew they were dangerous. But we didn't know how other species responded to them. You showed us something important. What did we show you? That the Quarians would rather die than fight. That is valuable information. Velthar felt cold. You judge us for that? Jiwoo shook her head. No. We respect it. Actually, your commitment to peace is admirable. But it also tells us that if we want allies against threats like the Krell, we'll need to be the ones who fight. Other species will need protecting. She pulled up a display showing human military capabilities. Warships designed for space combat. Weapons that made the improvised defenses on the Times. Luminous conscience Times look like children's toys. Strategies and tactics developed over centuries of human warfare. This is what we are, Jiwoo said. Not what we want to be. What we had to become. We explored our own solar system and found it empty. We looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. We hoped for friends. But we prepared for enemies. Velthar looked at the displays, his mind reeling. The humans aboard the Times, luminous conscience Times, had not been desperate survivors improvising. They had been highly trained specialists, expected to survive and fight in impossible situations. Everything was planned. Even the way Captain Hyun fought. Hyun is one of our best. She's survived 3 first contact scenarios. 2 were peaceful. 1 was not. She volunteered for the Times Baekdu Times mission knowing there was a high probability of hostile contact. But she seemed so. She protected us. She cared about us. She did care. That's not fake. Humans can be prepared for violence and still choose compassion. We can be ready to kill and still prefer to save lives. Those things aren't contradictory to us. They're necessary. Jiwoo sat down and gestured for Velthar to do the same. Let me tell you something about humanity. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or fastest. We became dominant because we could adapt, because we could work together, because we were too stubborn to give up. She pulled up an image of early humans, primitive and vulnerable. Our ancestors survived predators that were bigger, faster, stronger. They survived by being smart, by making tools, by hunting together, by never, ever giving up. More images appeared. Human history and fast forward. Wars and peace. Destruction and creation. Failure and triumph. We've nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. Nuclear war, climate collapse, artificial intelligence gone wrong, pandemics. Every generation faces extinction and somehow survives. Do you know why? Velthar shook his head. Because we learn. Every disaster teaches us something. Every war shows us the cost of failure. We remember. We adapt. We prepare. And we survive. Jiwoo stood. That's what makes humans dangerous. Not our weapons or our tactics, but our refusal to die. Our ability to learn from every mistake. Our stubborn insistence on surviving no matter what the universe throws at us. She looked at Velthar. You asked Captain Hyun to bring you here. You wanted to understand us. Now you do. What will you tell your people? Velthar was quiet for a long time. He thought about everything he had seen. The violence and the kindness. The weapons and the gardens. The careful preparation and the genuine compassion. I will tell them the truth, he said finally. That humans are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. But not in the way we first feared. How then? You are dangerous because you understand violence completely. You know its cost. You carry its weight. But you also know when not to use it. You offer peace first. You seek friendship. You help those in need. But if someone threatens you, or those you protect, they will face the full force of your capability. Velthar stood. I will recommend that the Quarian Council seek immediate alliance with humanity, not because we fear you, but because we need you. The galaxy is not as safe as we believed. The Krell are not the only threat. And, my people, we have forgotten how to protect ourselves. Jiwoo smiled. And what will you say when they ask if they can trust us? Velthar thought about Hyun, fighting with a broken arm to protect him. About Nari, working until exhaustion to save Quarian lives. About Bora, turning their research vessel into something that could fight. About Taemin, carrying the weight of necessary violence. About all of them, choosing to help strangers when they could have saved themselves. I will say that humans are not perfect. They are capable of terrible things. But they are also capable of choosing to be better. And that choice, that constant struggle to be good, despite their capacity for evil, is what makes them trustworthy. Before Velthar returned to Quarian space, Hyun met with him one final time. They stood in a garden on the military base, surrounded by flowers that humans had planted even in this place of war. What happens now? Hyun asked. I will make my report to the council. I will tell them everything I have seen. Then, they will decide. And if they decide against alliance, then I will have failed. But at least I will have tried. Hyun smiled. That's very human of you. Velthar realized she was right. He had changed. The encounter with the Krell, the time with the humans, had altered something fundamental in him. He could never go back to the comfortable certainty he had known before. What would you do? He asked. If the council rejects alliance, we would be disappointed. But we would respect their choice. We would continue exploring, seeking friends, hoping for peace, but we would also remain prepared. That's what humans do. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. Keep going, no matter what. Velthar looked at the flowers, at this small piece of beauty in a military installation. You know what I realized? You are not warriors who learn to be kind. You are kind beings who learn to be warriors. That is the difference. Maybe, Hyun said. Or maybe we're just survivors. Doing what needs to be done. Trying to be good when we can. Fighting when we must. Carrying the weight of both. As Velthar's transport prepared to leave, he looked back at Earth one last time. The beautiful blue world that had birthed such contradictory beings. Peaceful and prepared. Kind and capable. Dangerous and devoted to protecting others. He would tell the council everything. About human violence and human compassion. About their terrible weapons and their beautiful gardens. About their capacity for war and their preference for peace. About how they were not to be feared or conquered, but to be stood beside. And he would end his report with these words. The day I was with humans, I discovered true terror. Not the terror of their violence, but the terror of realizing how unprepared we are, how comfortable we have become, how we have let others fight for the peace we enjoy. Humans offer us a choice. Stand with them, learn from them, or be left behind in a universe that is far more dangerous than we knew. I recommend we choose the first option. Not because we fear humans, but because anyone foolish enough to threaten humanity should fear us standing beside them. When Velthar presented his report to the Quarian Council, there was silence. Then, debate. Then discussion that lasted for days. Some council members were afraid of human power. Others saw the opportunity for protection. Still, others wondered if alliance with such a violent species would corrupt Quarian culture. In the end, the vote was close. But it passed. The Quarian Confederation would extend formal alliance to humanity. They would share technology, resources, and knowledge. And when threats like the Krell arose, they would face them together. Years later, when Velthar was asked about that decision, he always gave the same answer. We thought we were advanced because we had evolved beyond violence. But humans showed us that true advancement is not forgetting violence, but choosing when to use it. We thought we were wise because we chose peace. But humans showed us that true wisdom is being capable of war, but preferring peace. They did not make us warriors. They made us understand that peace must be protected. And for that lesson, the price we paid in blood and fear, and changed philosophy, was worth it. The galaxy would come to learn what Velthar had discovered. Humans were dangerous, but they were also loyal, compassionate, and stubbornly devoted to protecting those they called friends. They asked for peace. They hoped for understanding. But they were always prepared for war. And perhaps that was what the universe needed. Not more philosophers who had forgotten the cost of their peace, but guardians who remembered it and chose to pay that price so others would not have to. The day Velthar had been with humans, he had discovered true terror. But he had also discovered true hope. Hope that in a dangerous universe, there were beings who would stand against the darkness, who would fight when fighting was needed, who would protect the vulnerable and defend the innocent, who would carry the terrible weight of necessary violence so that others could live in peace. That was humanity, terrifying and wonderful, dangerous and devoted, and the galaxy would never be the same.